Hey, what is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video, we're going over Bitcoin as it absolutely shits the bed on the rest of the market, with the market being down about 6.8%. Now, we saw yesterday some absolutely strong gains off of the FOMC meeting, and I did send out a warning, honestly, in my Patreon. I said it feels like a bit of an overreaction to news we already knew was coming, but at the end of the day, we're just going to see what this market does and go with it from there. But one thing we can see is that as Bitcoin is just completely tearing the rest of the market down, we are still interacting with key levels of support that do give us a little bit of the ability to predict when we could see these strong bounces to the upside. So for those reasons, I'm going to give you guys the rest of the breakdown targets in which we have over the next couple days and the next couple weeks, and exactly how I am going about it in order to still maximize gains no matter what this market is doing. So the way in which we found our three breakdown targets that we covered just about 1.5 to 2 weeks ago roughly was going to be through the assessment of this ascending wedge. I told you guys that once you break to the downside of an ascending wedge, you can very clearly start to mark the points in which you will most likely interact with as targets to the downside. The way in which you're going to do that is simply by assessing when was the last times that you touched the bottom side of the wedge. And now it's one of the easier ways to track these breakdown targets, but it's very consistent. And as you can see, this was touch number 1, this was touch number 2, and this was touch number 3. And at this point, what we did is we just draw those lines across in the video. And I said, those are where we need to expect the price to come down to. And what you can see at this point is that our very first breakdown target became a key point of support before today, in which as we did hit this level, we saw a super strong pump to the upside in which we retested $40,000. This establishment of support on this level confirmed to me that our breakdown targets are going to work in sync. And I do believe that any of them have the potential to be the bottom in which we do start to turn this thing around. And so for that reason, what we need to start to plan on is, since this one has been lost, I told you guys a very good trade would be shorting from key level of support number 1 to key level of support number 2. I told you guys that I think if you are going to be able to take advantage of short trading, the way in which I would be doing it is on a very small amount of leverage, because this is a volatile market, but I would be short trading from breakdown target to breakdown target as we do lose them. And had you taken on that trade, you would be able to have seen some gains from point A to point B, where we are now. Now what we can see is that now that $37.8 thousand was lost, we have now come down to visit $36.4 thousand as breakdown target number 2. Now, just as we did see a key level of support established here, I think this point could very possibly be a point in which we do start to revolve around and maybe even consolidate at, due to the fact that this is another strong breakdown target. The issue is, though, that we didn't get as strong of support establishment on the wedge back here as we did here, okay? And so what I've noticed is that the amount of strength of support established on the wedge tends to translate to the amount of strength of support at that point itself. And so although I do believe that we could very possibly start to see some consolidation here, I'm not exactly sure that it's going to be as strong in this level, but of course, who am I to say what's going to happen? But all I know is that we are coming down to our next breakdown target at $36.4 thousand, and I am going to go about this exactly like I did with $37.8 thousand, like we talked about a week and a half ago. My current game plan is to add to my dollar cost averaging portfolio as we hit these breakdown targets. So since that is the case, basically as soon as this video ends, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do some accumulating. My Ethereums, my Matics, my Bitcoins, my ADAs and Solanas. I'm going to majoritively go into Ethereum, and the next one is going to be Bitcoin in that order. But realistically, I think that any of these points are the breakdown targets for this capitulation event in which we are seeing. And I think any of them have the potential for us to set the higher low and continue towards the top side. So for that reason, I am going to be accumulating here. If we are going to see the price coming through $36.4 thousand, my next move then would be to short it to $35.1 thousand. I think that a short trade on maybe just 2 to 3x leverage of this, on Bitcoin at about 4% could translate to roughly 12 to 15% in gains, and it is something I want to take advantage of. And what I do is I take the gains in which we see from that short trade and apply them to my dollar cost average portfolio and use those gains to buy more crypto once we hit the breakdown target. So that's still my game plan. I'm going to go about this move that we're seeing right here the exact same way I went about this one. That what I did, that little game plan worked perfectly here, and I still believe there is potential for it to work perfectly here. The reason why I am still bullish and the reason why I do still believe that these different levels are going to be able to hold is simply just due to what the charts are saying. As you guys can see, we are getting extremely overextended to the downside on the price itself, setting massive lower lows, but we are still setting the higher lows on the RSI on the dailies, which says that although the price is continuing down, the bears are losing momentum and the bulls could very possibly be picking it up, causing, of course, this bullish divergence. Not only that, though, if we do look at our Bollinger Bands, one thing you can see is that we have already seen the full correction to the downside. What I mean by that is Bitcoin has a tendency to go from its bottom side of its Bollinger Band envelope. If I just clear this off here, it has a tendency to go from the bottom side of its Bollinger Band envelope to the 20 SMA, decide if it's going to get rejected or clear it. If it clears it, it will more often than not revisit the top side. If it gets rejected, it will more often than not revisit the bottom side. And once we hit the bottom side, we will then usually start our next journey towards the 20 SMA. And so considering that this is already complete and we are already extended to the downside here, mixed in with the fact that we are still seeing some bullish divergence on the charts, I do believe that we still very possibly could see the stepping in at any given point and causing rejections at these breakdown targets. And if we do look at this thing on the weekly timeframes, the reason why I even still care about these breakdown targets is because if we do go ahead and look at the RSI in comparison, what we can see here is we are still on track to confirm this is a huge bullish divergence in which we saw the low and the higher low and the low and the lower low. And what this means is that as long as we continue and we can set in the higher low here and continue towards the top side, this massive drive of bullish divergence will have been confirmed. And from there, that enables the bulls, in my opinion, to see growth of maybe even back into towards the $50,000 to $55,000 level. Even if we do, start to see a little bit of turbulence here, we could still set in something of a double bottom, the W bottom, or anything of that nature that opens up those doors towards the top side. So overall, I am still very confident in this market, and I do like the fact that we are still actively interacting with these breakdown targets clear as day. And so for that reason, I'm comfortable accumulating at these levels, as well as the fact that I am comfortable shorting from level to level in order to take advantage of this move no matter what the market is doing. So with that said, that's my take on what's going on. I think we're just revisiting these breakdown targets, and while we are still above $35.1 thousand, we still do have key levels to hold us up, and I'm not too stressed. If we do lose $35.1 thousand, I will of course make a new update, as we very probably would start to come down towards $33,000 to $32,000. But at the end of the day, we'll figure that out when the time comes. So with that said, that's going to be about it for today's video. Just a real quick and swift update, and I hope it did provide a little clarity in the shit show of crypto that we are seeing today. And with that said, of course, if you guys did enjoy today's video, you can always let me know simply by smashing the like button and subscribing to the channel if you are new. And I will see you all next time.